Hi, my name is Tonya Richardson-Dean, and I'm a student at Liberty University. This presentation will be for my HSER 508, which is Studies in Interpersonal Communications. This is my interpersonal communication project. The beginning of this project, I did a self-assessment on the discovery.com, and on that online assessment I did score a 70, which determined that I have good communication skills, managed to get points across in a clear and concise way, able to listen to others and understand where they are coming from. If you would turn to the next slide, and we're going to identify my overarching goal. Many attempts to communicate are nullified by saying too much. Robert Greenleaf. Perception is my identifiable overarching goal in my life. Stewart defines perception as a social and cognitive process in which people assign meaning to sensory cues. This overarching goal influences my reception as well as my attention. Next slide, please. Definition of enlarging the conversation. Enlarging the conversation based upon my own overarching goal would be defined as searching my spiritual being for stereotypes and prejudice that might cloud my judgment when entering or being in a conversation with someone. In order to expand or enlarge my listening and speaking skills, having an open heart to receive people that are different is a must. Next slide, please. The background and behavior blends that play a major part in my interpersonal communication skills. The positives are I was raised in the Bible Belt in the South. My father is a Baptist pastor for 42 years, and I'm from a large family of 9 children. Some of the negative behavioral and background blends are my parents are of another generation, social economics, and strokes, which are Burley Allen textbook defined as those which are any form of recognition or attention one person gives to another. And some of those examples are like touching, winks, frowns, some of those areas. And I say that my parents of another generation or from another generation is a negative because my oldest brother and myself, there's a 21-year difference. And my parents were already in their late 60s once I graduated high school. So there is a big major gap within there, and that to me is a negative. Potential barriers that I recognized in this study. Some of the barriers were biased listening, and those are when we form an opinion about the level and value of what will be said. Emotions, things like hot buttons, when another person pushes our buttons with a word, phrase, or topic that are not too easy for us to discuss. They're not comfortable issues for us. And also fatigue, which is a physical barrier that keeps our body energy low when we're in conversation with someone else. Next slide, please. How to deal with barriers. I found that it was easy for me to deal with these type barriers through the Word of God. James 1:19 and 20 says, "My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteousness, life that God desires." I find it easy to be able to go through the Word of God and apply things to the Word of God to issues in my life that are not contrary, that are not like the Word of God. Next slide, please. I found the internal and external noise pollutions and solutions. Some of the internal noise pollution are red flag words, self-consciousness, which can be viewed as a kind of preoccupation with internal matters at the expense of effective listening. I also found that daydreaming was an internal noise. Next slide, please. Some of the external noise pollutions are talkers not speaking loud enough or whispering, the room temperature, too cold or too hot, or interruptions on by the phone calls or other people just interrupting you when you're speaking. Next slide, please. Some of the solutions that I found for the external and internal noise pollutions were using verbal feedbacks, which can reduce the misunderstanding and the faulty communication. Sometimes we assume what we hear is something else, when actually if we just take the time to have verbal feedback, then we would know that each person is on the same page. They would understand what I'm saying, and I would understand as a listener. Another solution would be listening to nonverbals. Burley Allen suggests that this is one of the most important skills of effective listening because it can set a positive or negative tone for the speaker. Next slide, please. In all of that, I found that I had to have a plan of action to improve my personal skills. The only things worth learning are the things you learn after you know it all. Harry Truman. Next slide. Perception is the overarching goal that I must improve on in my interpersonal communication skills. Here are some things I plan to do in order for those improvements to happen, as well as invite others to join the conversation. Next slide, please. The first thing I plan to do is focus obtaining empathetic listening during the course of all conversation. Second, improve supervisory skills when dealing with employees or laymen at the church who have problems. Number 3, increase respect, trust, and rapport with co-workers and church members. Number 4, increase my self-knowledge. Number 5, utilize the communication model, questions to keep in mind when conversating, and also utilizing the guidelines for lessening resistance. Next slide. Thank you for this presentation. I have learned a lot in this class, and I am going to be a better listener as well as a better speaker because of this assignment. Thank you.